prize fighters, circus freaks, and gangsters. I'm Greta.
And I'm Jamie.
And we are here to look at the depictions of 19th century America, both how it shaped America and how the depictions are shaping us now.
Ooh, that's a very good point. I don't think we've really delved into that too much.
I mean, I really sort of thought about it this time because this week we get another movie, and I am so stupidly excited about this. This was so good.
This really was. We got to go back to Season 1, Episode 5, The Blood and the Shit, and get back to, well, we didn't quite get to Mexico, but we got to the border of Mexico.
Right, and so this episode is called To a Man with a Hammer, Everything Looks Like a Nail, and that meant a lot of things in this episode.
Yeah, so this is an amazing episode because we get to get a tournament fight trope like Bloodsport, like Kickboxer. This is what I grew up watching, and I am here for it. Did you grow up watching those movies at all?
No, not really. Like, it just, that sort of stuff didn't do it for me, but it was also a revenge flick. But everything was turned inside out, and it was awesome.
Oh, it was. But I do have to mention a little bit, because Bruce Lee is actually the progenitor of this trope in film. Without Bruce Lee, we would not have these tournament fights in movies. So Bruce Lee conceived...
Because you've talked about Bloodsport, so is this from that, or...
Bloodsport came out in the 90s. That was started Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
That was kind of a riff on Enter the Dragon. In Enter the Dragon, there's this tournament fight where Bruce Lee fights a bunch of different people, and they all have different martial arts styles.
And I've heard of that movie. Yeah.
There you go. So Enter the Dragon's the one that made Bruce Lee. And that scene came from a different screenplay that Bruce Lee wrote. It was called The Silent Flute, and he wrote it in 1970, and it eventually got made into a movie. Here we go, full circle.
Is this
crossover.
The Ring that you were talking about?
Yes.
The Ring of Iron?
Yeah.
We
Iron,
talked about
starring
that.
David Carradine. Yes. So David Carradine played his character, and it is a tremendously bad movie, but you have... all of the stuff that you have in Bloodsport is literally pulled right out of that movie, Circle of Iron, which came out of Bruce Lee's head.
Okay. So you want to get started with this, and we can talk about all of the parallels as we go through it? Because...
Absolutely.
I mean, from the beginning, I'm sort of like, it's a movie. I mean, it's going to be a buddy movie with that whole opening scene, but that CGI old Mexican village, I was like, okay, but I much rather that they actually just slapped in a green screen of old Mexico and saved the money for the gajillions of extras they had.
What was your issue with the old Mexican? I mean, it was barely even there, so why was this so...
Oh, no. I just had the moment when the burro's ears went past over the top of it. I was like, yeah, that's just CGI'd in. But again, it's sort of like me being mad about the wrong green beans.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I was just going, oh, all right, spaghetti western. They're just setting up as this is a Seergio Leone Spaghetti Western.
Yeah, because there's nowhere in South Africa that looks vaguely like that. So I'd much rather they didn't fly to New Mexico to film it and just saved all the money to pay the actors and make the costumes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and this is, so they're in a tournament fight that is being held on a plantation or a ranch that is on the border of the U.S. and Mexico.
A hacienda.
A hacienda.
Yes.
Yes. And so it's important that this is on the U.S. side because fist fighting was not even a thing in Mexico until after the 1930s. They really only fought with bladed weapons, and there's a variety of reasons for that. One of which being Mexico was in such a state of constant revolution in the 19th century.
Hell yeah.
They had 55 presidents in 63 years.
Oh, I mean, South America and Central America, as it transformed from New Spain into all the countries we sort of more or less recognize today, it was turmoil atop turmoil, atop disaster, atop turmoil. I mean, it's an it's the biggest, like, heart-wrenching epic ever.
Yeah. It's not fun. But we do have a tradition that is held over from the pre-Columbian times called Tinku, which is a festival of fighting that would happen on special holidays. And they still have it in Bolivia.
Cool.
So if you want to, you can watch grandmas beat the shit out of each other in this street in Bolivia. I mean, this is legit like a street fight. People throwing rocks at each other. It's madness. But they do it so that they can, like, get out all their hatred and anger for the remainder of the year. And it's supposed to, like, keep people from beating the shit out of each other during the rest of the time. But, so that's what we're having here because this tournament of fighting is to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of a forced marriage by a white man to basically a Mexican hostage, his Mexican hostage wife.
Yeah, and we will so get into all of that stuff. But I wanted to talk just for a hot second about the whole hacienda thing. This was a Spanish innovation, and they were sort of coming in with like how the Spanish made towns back in Spain. And so it was a little bit of like the manor house or a small castle, and then you would sort of have the village surrounding it. And so the whole thing that there's like the outer town, the outer village, where like everybody comes in from the surrounding countryside to do all their business. And then there's like the inner court where like the actual like man of the house, like that's a very true to life hacienda complex kind of pueblo thing. Like that works.
Does that differ significantly from a plantation or a ranch in the way it's set? I mean, it sounds basically the same.
It's very much the same. American plantations tended not to do much business with the surrounding countryside. A big difference is that when Americans claimed land and plopped a plantation there, they chased out the Native Americans, the indigenous people who were there. Whereas the Spanish, when they plopped down their hacienda, they kept the native population, the indigenous people, the Native Americans there and either enslaved them or worked with them. It really sort of depended. They had a whole system, unlike the Northern European thing, like we have to keep our religion and our people like super pure. The Spanish were like, hey, you could be more Catholics. Let's make you more Catholics.
Yeah.
And so they had this whole system. Like they married into the local aristocracy in the South American tribal systems. And they had a whole system for ranking, like how much Spanish you were, how much, indigenous person you were. And then later on, as Africans became freed people, how much, sort of African descent. Like the system is screwed up and fucked because it like gave you more and less status, but they recognize like this is going to happen and we can either shun all of these people and make them mad, or we can all bring them into the fold and we have more Catholics than everybody else. So neener.
So their legal rights were basically dependent on their percentage of whiteness, kind of like in the United States?
Yeah. And then there were all sorts of exceptions because if you were like super rich, or if you came from the nobility of the local tribal system, you might have, it was rife with exceptions and fabulously complicated and as Baroque as anything Spanish of the period.
I marvel consistently at how much effort people put into the dumbest shit. But having just watched the Free State of Jones, where they were arguing about, like, 25% of black being whether or not you're legally allowed to get married to a white woman or not, it broke my brain. So it sounds like Mexico is just like takes that and takes to the 10th power.
Except you can't do this and you can do this was a lot more relaxed. There was also a lot of like waiving the rules if somebody was useful. And so actually people did have a lot more rights, which is why all of South America is sort of this whole range of colors, except at the very tippy top, everybody tends to be paler. But all through society, you will see a much greater mixing of colors than you do in North America. Like to this day.
All right. I thought that was restricted like to, I think Mexico City had a very strong bohemian culture in the late 19th century, maybe. Was it?
It definitely did. It definitely did.
Yeah.
But just throughout South America, you really don't have the same obsession with whiteness as early on as it happens in North America.
Ah, well, that's good, because that is an exhausting obsession.
Right.
Ah.
Okay. So we get our walk through the exciting village, and there's like a little mini cockfight going on. We get to see some of these sexy senoritas. There's somebody in like Day of the Dead
naked
body paint.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, that's
she's naked
once
in
again,
Day of the Dead body paint.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's fantasy element, but sure, whatever. We're getting the flavor. Go for it. I don't care.
Yeah, and Hong is eating a burrito.
Which, yes, totally possible. It appears to be a flour tortilla, which I'm like, probably not. But this place is owned by a white dude, so maybe. But the fact that he had like a paper napkin on it, 100% no.
Now, I did a bunch of research regarding tacos back in the day, and I know that tacos Arab, which is the Lebanese taco that basically the shawarma that was transferred into Mexico, that became al pastor, happened, we think,
Yum.
Oh God, I love it so much. And my apologies to any pigs who might be listening. I really have to stop eating our porcine friends, but my God, they're delicious. They're so delicious, especially in a taco.
Yeah.
But still, like, I don't know that the thread completely holds, but I would say it is a possibility that they were.
Right. And again, since this rich white guy owns the place, maybe he's bringing in white flour. But for a street vendor at this time and place, it just doesn't seem likely.
Well,
but I'm like,
growing flour on the hacienda? Because, I mean, all the white people were growing flour, so...
Right.
Okay. They would have just been eating regular bread, you think, maybe?
It says to me, not likely, but completely possible. Like, I'm not mad at it. But the paper napkin he was holding it in, no, people weren't doing that.
What? Yeah, paper napkins couldn't have existed then. We didn't even have pulp paper then.
We were just starting to get it, but like if they'd wrapped it in a banana leaf, but again, the actor had to keep holding this and like not getting goo on his fingers or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. Fine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't get to find out what kind of burrito it was, but Hong loved it.
Yes.
You do know that.
Oh, I have so much more.
And we saw a tequila sign in the background as well.
Yes. Totally a thing.
And tequila was relatively new. It was within the last 150, 200 years that it had been invented?
Yeah. Because distilling technology had been brought into South and Central America by the Spanish, both legally from like the Spanish bringing over the metal manufactured, like the copper stills and whatever, but also sort of through the sub-economy from sailors, some of them coming back from China because there was clay pot distilling there. And so Spain has this funny mixture of the colliding of European and Chinese distilling going on at this period.
Oh, that is interesting. Well, and I imagine they probably would have started distilling early because they were owned by the Arabs, and the Arabs were the ones who pioneered distillation.
Distillation seems to have happened a couple of times. Yeah, the Arabs seem to be the major agents spreading it, but it appeers to have been put together by the Chinese as well independently.
I did not know that. Was that like co-developed around? Did it develop around the same time? What was that? 12th century, 13th century?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were. I have an episode on that way back in season 1 where I just sort of talk about the history of distillation, and because the Chinese were doing it in clay, the ability to excavate it and date it and everything, like clay pots work real nice. They sit in the ground very cooperatively and stay there.
I have listened to that episode because that's where I learned of the horrors of Applejack and the hangovers that it must have produced. Yeah, cinnamon schnapps has never done anybody so wrong as that stuff must have done. My God.
So, but not only do we have the burrito, my question of whether or not Hong is gay or he was just getting his chops busted over it is answered definitively.
Yes.
And he is gay.
With the funniest conversation that has happened between probably every idiot straight man and their gay friend that has ever happened. Which, so you like dicks? Well, you like guys. So Do you like me? You don't like me? Why the fuck don't you like me? Yeah, it's...
Well, and I was sitting here cracking up because he's having exactly the same conversation so many guys have with women. What do you mean you have a type and it's not me? Like, but whereas with women, it's like they're insulted. But at this point, young June's like, am I insulted? I don't know. Just like the look of confusion on his face is fabulous. Like, just so many guys are so unwilling to accept that just because, well, they obviously have a type. Guys have types. Like, everybody does. It's not a problem. But they just get mad that whoever they think is their type doesn't reciprocate. They're like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, you're exhausting.
Well, it does seem like most guys think that they are every person's type.
Yeah.
Most guys have it very ingrained in their head that they are definitely everyone's type.
But the ones I feel the sorriest for, and it happens to women and men, but with all of this like weird kind of, this very saddest incels are like trying to make themselves the type of the women they think they want. And there is no more miserable life trying to be somebody who you aren't. Because when you are who you are, you will find your person.
Yeah. They just might not look like the person you think you're supposed to want. Which I think is the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and beauty fades. And like all of these women they're sort of showing as like the perfect woman. Like, okay, they only look like that after hours of preparation. And
yeah, they look like hammered shit 99% of the time. Hammered shit. My God.
I mean, the whole women waking up in the morning, I can't let anybody see me without my makeup. Like, this is some bullshit that is just laid upon us in layers from both directions. And it's tiring.
Yes.
Find who you're supposed to be with. Don't pretend to be somebody else. That's all I can say.
Exactly. And you know who would agree with that? The director of this episode, who is Zing. Zing directed this episode. My man, Dustin Nguyen.
Yes.
Killing it. And we'll get to see 2 more episodes next season that he directs as well.
And are they fight episodes as well? Because
I did not go so far as to... I'm sure that they are, but I didn't go so far as to look them up. I just I saw that there were 2 more coming in season 3, and I was like, yay!
Oh, yeah, because I was just like, okay, having an actor in the series who fights be the director, I was like, good move, and it turned out great. So, yeah. Yes.
But more than that, the banter in this episode is amazing. Like, he turned the banter all the way up and focused really hard on their banter. And on Hong constantly eating, because in the next scene, he's eating a pear.
Yes.
And
but you skipped over the effective security procedures at the gates.
Oh, yes, where they disarm everybody in every... But, I mean, that's the thing... And you know what? This is the thing that everybody knows is in every cowboy movie, and still they think that they were all running around with guns everywhere.
Right.
But guns were illegal anywhere that a civilized place was considering itself civilized. You could not have guns.
Yes.
The end.
Yeah. So great security procedures, and the banter from young June, where he's like, "Tell no one, I'm giving up my knives."
Oh, yeah, because he didn't want to give up his knives, and they were breaking his balls about it, and then he saw some guy get backshot trying to walk in with a weapon, and he was like, all right, I'm going to hand these over, but you guys shut the fuck up about it. Not a word, he says.
Let's get to Hong eating the pear, because that's what I'm like, this guy is Hanuman. You're right. He is the Monkey King, because he's like Mr. Cheerful Mayhem.
Yeah, he's so amazing. And this is unrelated to the pear he was eating, because it looked like a normal pear, but I had my first Asian pear this weekend. And it was strange. And I don't like watermelon, so I don't think I'll ever have another Asian pear.
I was going to say, it's watery and crispy in a way that's very unexpected, but it does have that same grainy pear graininess.
I feel like it was like eating a pear-flavored watermelon. And I don't like watermelon at all.
Yeah, that's a very good description of it. But it was funny. Hong gets in with his weapon because everybody at the gate lacks creativity.
Well, yeah, and nobody's going to look for somebody to have Buddhist prayer beads and they don't even know what Buddhist prayer beads are, so they couldn't even conceive of them being used as a weapon.
Right. But then we get like the super great trope where awesome, I'm just minding my own business. And then of course
we get a UFC cameo from Michael Bisping.
Yeah.
Who slams into Assam and tells him to watch where he's going. He even has an amazing stereotypical name, Dolph Jagger.
And it was like the guy with this like North London quasi Irish-ish accent. He didn't say enough for me to really peg it, but I'm like, Dolph Jagger? That's the name you gave this guy?
Yeah, I don't think Michael Bisping can do accents. So he's just British. So he's just going to be British.
Yeah, so just call him, give him a very sort of British name, but Dolph oh, okay, sure, fine. Whatever.
Well, this is a little bit of a callback to going back to that trope of the guy going in and being the Asian guy who fights the foreigners. Huo Yuanzhao, the Chinese man who was actually like the source of all this, he was supposed to have fought a Russian pro wrestler whose name was like Irish O'Brien or Irish Patty O'Brien or something like that. And so there is a precedent for this where the guy was completely a different race. And I tried to look this man up, and it was so hard because I had to keep going all these different ways. And
so it was totally an Easter egg for fans of the movie. Okay, yep, I can appreciate that. And it was very much setting up these guys, it's going to be a showdown. That's how they were spinning this one up, and I was having fun with that. But the cop comes in and is like, don't fuck up the bar. Take it out. No, don't mess up the bar.
Yeah, well, probably he would have shot all of them anyway. He's just been itching to shoot somebody since he started. So everybody sits down to eat chips and salsa and drink tequila like they're at just down the street on Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, so it was really fun. So she's actually directing the food commentary at Hong. I'm like, she knows her audience. So salsa, 100%. Fruit and vegetable and herb sauces, like crushed sauces, everywhere in traditional Central American cuisine. And dipping tortilla in it, I believe it. That makes sense. Now, whether or not they would have fried it to these crispy chips, again, that's I don't know. Possible.
Well, do you know the history of the tortilla chip at all?
I have not delved into that. But just from what I know of what was going on in America at this point, lard hogs were becoming a thing, so there was a lot more oil around. Deep frying was starting to definitely become a thing. You notice the number of black folks sort of just around in the crowds in the background. Deep frying savory stuff was an African habit that was introduced into America. Because the Africans are the past masters of extracting oils from all sorts of botanical sources. It's impossible to name them all because everybody has their local favorite.
Well, that makes this even more interesting because I do know that without the company of Fritos and without Taco Bell, we basically wouldn't have Tex-Mex food the way we do because they really popularized it.
Sure.
And the Fritos came from it was a woman with a roadside stand in the American Southwest who was she was using her old tortillas, slicing them up and frying them and then salting them, and it was a snack. And he eventually turned that into the Fritos chips that we know and love today. But that wasn't until the middle of the 20th century. So it's possible, but like you said, it's possible, but I don't know that it's exactly probable.
Right. So you have a rich dude who's showing off. And so showing off that you're deep fat frying stuff, that's a wealth flex at this point. So again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They wouldn't have had corn oil or any, it would have had to have been beef fat or something, which would have been hard to come by because the cows would have been lean.
It totally would have been pig fat. The Europeans that settled North America were a very animal fat centric cultures. They had a little bit of olive oil, but that was if you were really, really rich. But we were butter, lard, beef fat, chicken fat, goose fat. We didn't really think of plants as a source of oil except for olives. Like, we just didn't have that in our brains.
Gotcha. Jesus. No, I wouldn't have wanted to eat any of the butter of this period. It would have been, unless it was coming directly, if I was maybe on a farm. But having read about all the adulteration going on in the cities, I wouldn't have touched butter. I probably wouldn't have eaten. Just rather starve than eat in the city.
Well, at this point, adulteration was getting going. But up before the Civil War, before railroads, city butter was fine. Salty, but fine. Yeah.
Well, salty is delicious.
Okay.
So they sit down to chicken salsa and tequila, and Hong sees some black cowboy boots trimmed in red. And Young Jun's like, those are the ugliest things I've ever seen. And he's like, I know. I want them.
Hong's a shoe guy, just like me.
Which is a conversation I have with my wife every day.
I was like, those aren't my taste, but I get your brain was completely hooked by a pair of shoes. I'm with you, man.
And sometimes a piece of clothing is so goddamn ugly, you have to have it. I don't know what that is, but you're like, I can pull that off. I can make that work.
Oh, yeah, but
it's going on
Dolph
me.
Jagger and his buds are walking through, and those were some nice fucking coats they were wearing. Those were so tailored for them. They looked so good.
Oh, and Elijah Rooker's overcoat, that felt coat that was trimmed in leather, was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It looked like the hottest thing to ever wear. I mean, it would have to be 30 below zero to wear that jacket, but my God, you'd be comfortable wearing it.
But yeah, the clothing work in here is great. But yeah, so Rooker goes into his whole, I'm just a humble, honest, hardworking man taking advantage of the opportunities the good Lord put in front of me.
All of the bootstrap conversation any person could ever jam into 30 seconds. He hits it. All the high points.
Yep. But he does say the gunpowder is what won the West. And I was like, okay, no notes. That was actually sort of well done in his pithy way.
Yeah, and but then and this is a conversation that happens on so many message boards you've never been on, but about how the gun replaced the sword as civilized man's weapon of choice, and we've lost the intimacy of combat.
Yeah,
you'll find so many dudes who've never been in a fist fight talking about the intimacy of combat.
So here's what I wrote. He's like, but I'd love to see some blood flying. I'm like, this is a man who never went into a conflict without overpowering odds and then had other people do most of the wet work.
Oh, yeah. He just comes in to finish him off. He's putting a bullet in some wounded person on the ground.
Yeah.
That's about his speed.
Yeah. But this whole, we've lost something, rah, rah, rah. Real men should be intimately beating the crap out of each other. And I'm like, okay, how about we just don't, I actually think sport fighting is a great outlet for a lot of people. I've even enjoyed it in my day to a certain extent, and I get the exhilaration, but this whole thing everybody should be doing it and the only worthy people are the ones who are doing it is some bullshit.
Yeah. And I mean, I've spent a considerable portion of my life going through all of the aristocratic male proving that I can be as I haven't spoken about it, but I mean, it seems like a thread throughout history where aristocratic men of a certain type have a need to prove that they're just as tough as the poor people or the barbarians or whichever people, and
right.
And we have and you see it with Elon Musk now and Zuckerberg. It's something that you have to get through, and you come to the realization you can't prove yourself endlessly because it's just an endless cycle of having to beat people up.
Yeah.
Which is exhausting. But it hurts me now to see it on the screen. I'm like, God damn it, I'm such an asshole. But then this man's an asshole because he says, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to get rich.
Oh,
meanwhile, the prize is for one person in this tournament. One person gets all the prize, which is horseshit. And it's only $2,500, which is $73,000 in modern money, which is way less than modern fighters make. Way less.
Oh, yeah. But then again, these guys, if they're where they are, they're probably coming from pretty straitened circumstances. But it's all of that bullshit. Risk everything to go to bed richer. for the chance to go to bed richer tonight than you woke up in the morning. And I'm like, but also implies a lot of people are going to go to bed poorer. And so it's the same thing that drives so much of our current modern culture, like Shark Tank and everything, that become fabulously wealthy through some shortcut instead of like looking at life and saying, wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning and know everything's fine? Like, that's what most people want.
Yes. Yeah. To know that you're not going to get your throat cut in your sleep is what most people want. And to know that you're not going to, like, die of an infection from a broken bone that you got trying to win a tiny amount of money so that you don't starve next year during the winter.
Right. And just things would run more smoothly. I mean, again, for people like Elon Musk, who's like, my life is too boring, so I have to stir up shit. I mean, that is what Rooker's doing here. My life is too boring. Now that I've defeated all the monsters around me, I'm going to, like, stir up some shit to make my life more interesting.
Yeah. And that's how I'm going to celebrate. Because what woman does not want to celebrate her wedding anniversary by getting a bunch of blood on her? You know, women don't want to be wined. They don't want to be dined. They don't want to be told they're beautiful. They don't want to be hugged. They don't want to
be taken out for a delicious meal.
Be told you don't want safety. No, you don't want safety. You want to be surrounded by a bunch of murderous psychopaths who are desperately trying to survive.
Unwashed, sweaty, with saliva and blood flying. Yes.
Yeah. That's what you want on your birthday.
Well, why do you think medieval times is so popular?
I thought it was for the turkey leg.
Oh my god!
So we find out his wife Marisol is Mexican, and he.
oh my god!
Is this where he?
No.
Yes, he says that he wore her down.
He broke her down. No. That's at the dinner. That's the indoor meal. We'll get there.
You already knew I was coming for that one. But the food.
Yeah.
We're at food. We're at burrito again. We're eating burritos. We're
Right.
eating chili. So we're eating corn on the cob.
Yes, and I really did like the fact that the Cantonese, and I'm not sure where Hong's from, but if he's with Hop Wei, he's probably from the southern coastal. Like, they're not saying anything about the chilies. They're like, yeah, okay, great, because they had chilies. In fact, the amount of crossover between Spanish Mexican food and Cantonese food is huge, because the Portuguese and the Spanish dropped off food in both places, or like mixed it around between all those places. So by the 19th century, what the Central Americans are eating and what the Cantonese, the coastal Chinese are eating have so much crossover. So they're like, this looks good.
Yeah, that's cool. I knew that the Portuguese spread deep frying to Japan, and that's where we get the breaded deep
tempura.
Fried. Yeah, tempura. But
yeah.
I don't like Japanese food very much. I find it bland. But yeah, tempura. And but I didn't know that about Southern Chinese food. That's fascinating.
Because like the corn, the chilies, of course, the citrus. Well, the citrus actually came from India, Asia area, and came over this way. They wouldn't necessarily have had limes at this point in Mexico, because that was still mostly a British monopoly, because those came out of India. But they totally would have had lemons everywhere. Lemons had been brought to the Americas like in the early 16th century, and oranges would have been everywhere. They mostly would have been bitter oranges, but they were starting to get sweet oranges as well. So there would have been just citrus everywhere.
Oh, nice. I thought it was funny they were doing tequila shots like we did them in college with the lime slice and with the salt. I don't know that's I think probably in the Old West. I mean, having read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian book, I don't remember anything other than filthy people slaughtering each other. They weren't sitting down to like have polite rules about doing shots with limes and tequila and salt. They were wearing people's scalps.
But on the other hand, I could also see the Chinese guys being like, whoa, that's a little rough, and then like being used to having fruit around all the time and like chewing on a lime or a lemon or something. That was not insane. And so I was like, yeah, that's interesting. I was going to get up in arms if somebody started doing body shots.
if they brought out an ice luge, yeah.
Okay. So, we get a little bit of what I put in my notes as like fancy street fighting. That first round of fight.
That first fight was trash. So they're sitting around eating, and Michael Bisping I guess he kills his first opponent. It was the weirdest fight choreography I've ever seen. His takedown didn't make any sense. He basically climbed on this guy's back and, like, I don't even know, was rubbing his face, and then he fell over.
I think he was supposed to be, like, compressing his carotid arteries so he'd pass out. What?
I don't know. He looked like he was
That's
rubbing his face. And then he broke his neck at the end. The whole thing was nonsense. Nobody's going to fight like that. Number one, you can't break anybody's neck like that. You can't sit on somebody's chest and push their head to the side like you're a chiropractor and break their neck. Otherwise, chiropractors would all be in prison.
And especially not that guy's neck. Jesus.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. But, and then... the most interesting thing of that scene, I thought, was Hong eating the scorpion at the bottom of a bottle of tequila. Which, I don't know, is that when did that, I would assume that was just a, rope-in, stupid-ass American tourist, and that was not a tradition.
I think that was, okay, there is something about having the larva of whatever beetle that is in the bottom of the tequila and the mezcal bottles, and I think it was sort of a test to see if the alcohol level was high enough, because as long as that's not rotting, you know that the alcohol level in the bottle is high enough.
That was going to be my guess. If I had to make one.
And then there's a whole bunch of other mythology and herbalism and everything else and traditional, medicinal, whatever, larded on top of it. But to me, the practicality has always been, as long as that bug isn't rotting, you know that it's good booze.
Yeah, and ants are citrusy, so I imagine scorpions would also be citrusy. I've never eaten one. Have you?
No, because in ants, the citrusy comes from something called formic acid. I don't know, and that's what gives the sting, like when ants bite you. I don't know what the chemical is that is a scorpion sting. I'm pretty sure it's not formic acid, because it can fuck you up a lot more.
Oh, well, that's disappointing that scorpions are not delicious and lemony.
I don't. I think they're just crunchy. Just like crickets.
Their flavor is crunch.
Okay, so we get a little more green screen Mexico, and we get our...
That would be a way better Nestle's Crunch bar. I would eat the hell out of a Nestle Crunch bar filled with scorpions.
Well, they do have cricket ones.
Yeah, but crickets aren't scorpions.
Okay, that's true.
But
they're crunchy bugs that are tasty.
Have you eaten one? Do you like them? I've heard they're nutty.
I have eaten fried crickets and cricket meal stuff and all of that, yeah.
What is it your thing or no?
It's just more like, this is traditional Mexican food, have a thingy with fried crickets in it. And I'm like, okay, it's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking that there was probably street food at some point, like crickets on a stick or something.
Yeah, exactly. When we were way back, one of the first times we saw the Feng Hai, and I couldn't figure out if there were bugs on a stick or songbirds on a stick. Having large, crunchy, fried bugs is a thing in a lot of places around the world.
It's kind of like popcorn, I guess.
Yeah. There's something in southern West Africa called mopani worms, and that's something it's a little savory morsel that's deep fried, and you have it in a little paper cone or a leaf cone or on a stick. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. I guess that probably would have been more accurate street food if they were going to really get into it, but then you'd have people vomiting in their shoes rather than marveling at the outstanding tailoring going on.
Right. But anyway, yeah, so we get some green screen Mexico again. I'm like, movie, and we get to have the touching scene where everybody's agony between Assam and Lope Vega comes out, and they connect.
I didn't take a single note on that trash sex scene. It was the slowest, lamest, and goddamn, how many close-ups of a man's ass do we need? I mean...
Oh, you've skipped ahead to the actual sex scene.
Okay. I didn't take any notes on this scene, so that's why I skipped ahead, because both the scenes with Vega, I'm just like, Jesus, this is god-awful.
Okay, well, Vega does this line about, and the people we love, and so Asam's like, so we're supposed to kiss now, and she's like, no, we're not going to do this, and he's like, all right. Like, I felt like he played that really cool. So I was like 2 thumbs up for Assam being like, okay, we're not going to do this. All right, fine. But then we get to the fights.
Well, she's been chasing him the entire time, and he's been turning her down the whole time. So if she's saying no now, he's like, exactly. Whatever, it doesn't change.
But yeah,
shit.
then we get to like fight. It's time to fight.
So you had some theories about certain fight styles here. So Michael Bisping is fighting an opponent here. What style do you think he's using?
And I just sort of saw that as sort of like fancy street fighting again. And we got to see the downfall of an attempted Superman punch.
Well, so he was using Angolo, which is an Angolan style of fighting that was turned into capoeira in Brazil.
Okay.
But it also heavily influenced American boxing styles, and that's where you come up with the defensive and evasive and countering boxing. It all comes from Angolo. So that is the style he was using. And it has to do with, like, you do a lot of inverted kicks. Yep.
Yeah. But there was some straight up capoeira in here like that. It looked good and it was flashy and fun. I was like, there was sort of like bastardized Muay Thai or something. The guy who was doing like the tiger claws and scratching. And I was like, but I was like, that was mostly just some pirate bullshit.
He was like a weird mentally challenged vampire / Rasputin, and he was wearing weird like Rasputin style makeup, and he had his fingernails filed all sharp. So my theory is, and I can show you a picture that if you want to, you can put in the show notes. But there are drawings of gougers from the 19th century. It was a fighting style in the South. Okay. And so it was a rough and tumble style, and basically a knockout was to pop somebody's eye out. And they grew their fingernails really long.
This is a callback to Gangs of New York with all of like the... Yeah.
They would grow their nails really long and sharpen them down. They'd sharpen their teeth. And so I think this was that. It was just like nobody was fighting like a wild cat or whatever that man was fighting like. But Assam was not going to lose.
Yeah, I was like, this is just some pirate bullshit.
But Assam got the scratches across his chest, which were again a callback to Enter the Dragon, because at the end he's fighting the bad guy who slashes him with this like kind of Wolverine type weapon, and it's got 4 claws on it, and so he rakes him across the chest with it, and that's an iconic picture of Bruce Lee.
See, all I thought is like, you need to get some ointment on that. I don't know what's under his nails, but yeah, you need to get that cleaned out right away, man. But the way that young June kind of psychs up or doesn't psych up Assam for the fight just cracked me up, because we totally get that Lee Young callback, like, don't fuck it up this time, man.
Yeah, but I don't think young June is also not aware of how much fighting Assam has been doing down in.
No.
Yeah, so I think that it's probably a shock to him to see how badly that Assam is just jacking these people up, because he's fucking them up fast.
I really like that opening fight with Dolph there, because they had sort of set it up like, this is going to be the good fight. This is the fight we're all waiting for. And he just, I mean, because Dolph Jaeger is all like pumped up because he's been like taking people out left and right. So I think he went into that fight with Assam like super overconfident.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Those the guys who were in that era who were fighting people from other regions, it wasn't totally unknown to them to get kicked. But because there was a lot of kick fighting coming out of Europe as well. But it was probably very annoying for to be a guy who was that that guy, and then it was kind of like when I went to Mongolia, and I was a pretty good wrestler, but I was way bigger than all these Mongolians. And when I'd wrestle them in this jacket wrestling, they'd just throw me a country mile, and I'd be like, "How is this happening? It's not possible." And so yeah, and it's easy to when you're good at something and then you outsize somebody, it's easy to get worked like that.
And it totally reminded me of that stupid thing that guys would say occasionally. Oh, if we get into something here, this could be 2 hits. Me hitting you and you hitting the ground.
Yeah. Or every dad's line, the first 30 seconds is mine.
Yeah.
Every dad loves saying that. But we had some weird ass fights in here because we had kung fu versus a crusader. I don't know how I don't know if they woke him up out of a deep slumber. Maybe an Aztec warrior put him to sleep. But he was dressed like a medieval crusader, and he got his ass whipped by a little Chinese monk
who was just flying through the air and kicking him in the face. And to me, it was like he was kicking him in the face with the wrong foot. As far as like the receiver, because you'd be like watching the wrong foot and then the other foot would come get you.
Yeah. He was good with the little fakes, but Assam had no problem with him. And just instead of going at him with the wushu style that guy was using, even though Assam does that style, he just busted out his old American ground and pound and trashed that kung fu guy.
Yes, because my old sensei would have loved that guy because she was always about, like, if you don't have the weight on somebody, use distance. And the little guy was, like, using his legs because that gave him the reach. And Assam's like, nah, I'll just get inside and we'll call this a day.
Yeah. Assam was amazing, and he then he fights the last Angolo guy with and he beats him with kicks. So he uses a different style in every single fight,
encounter,
and it was really cool to watch. Yeah.
But so I'm glad I was able to sort of pick out the more recognizable stuff. But yeah, the details,
absolutely
love it. But yeah, it's like, you're very impressive, young man. We would like to give you a seat at the big table.
Yeah. That guy's heavy. He was great as that heavy. I didn't look up the actor's name, and he barely even had a name in the thing. I think I wrote it down in some Smits. Yeah, they only mentioned it once, I think. But Smits was phenomenal.
When he had his longest line, I was like, see, that's the accent the Dolph Jagger guy should have had, because he sounded fairly Germanic when he had like a longer thing to say.
Yeah, well,
and I was like, and
a lot of people would have had German accents if this was entirely accurate. I think a lot of people would have had German accents.
Yeah, there was a lot of German immigration into Mexico. There was quite a bit into North America as well, because especially a lot of Protestant Germans, but there were quite a few Catholic Germans, and so they wanted to emigrate into places that were friendly to Catholics, and so a bunch of them ended up in Mexico and South America.
I hadn't realized that's what drove their move there, because working on the railroad didn't seem to make any sense, because they could have done that in the United States, and there was a massive German community in St. Louis anyway, which is where the railroad started, so why the hell didn't they move there? So now I get it.
Yeah, and originally St. Louis was within Spanish territory. And that's the other thing. The Germans tended to emigrate as families, and so were very successful at starting farms, as opposed to a lot of the North American Europeans who emigrated as single men. And this whole individualist thing where the Germans came in as groups and families and villages. They're like, what's going on in Germany or my part of Bavaria or my part of Prussia is real fucked up, man. And I just want to get out of this because I don't feel like getting conscripted into some asshole prince's war.
Yeah, they don't want.
And so they would bring their whole family, and they could successfully start a farm.
Well, now that makes even more sense, because I've wondered why the Volga. I knew that the Volga Germans were encouraged to move into Russia because of their farming practices, but I didn't know exactly what those farming practices were. And now they went to Minnesota, they went to Russia, and they went to Mexico.
Right.
And I guess the only place they weren't really persecuted was the United States.
Right. Until World War II. And then we finally got around to persecuting them as well.
Yeah. Those Volga Germans
did not... We're dicks to somebody new every decade.
Why not?
But we get speaking of being dicks to someone, the American guys are in there with Chinese taking her germs. They go after Hong.
Yeah, Hong versus the robbers is amazing because it's such a stereotypical. Like, he even whistles while he's following them because they're going to go rob Assam and Vega, and then he just starts whipping their asses using his little Hanuman prayer bead, John, and it is amazing.
Yeah. And his battle grin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's grinning the entire time, and then he murders a man with a flying guillotine at the end. It's like he uses a diamond cutter, for anybody who's a WWE fan, and breaks a man's neck with a diamond cutter. It is amazing.
Yeah. So Yeah, we'll skip over the, hey, did you know this was originally a Cinemax show? So we're going to do a little bit of Skinemax pedigree here. I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
We got the saxophone going.
Neither of us are here for this part. We get that elsewhere. Blah, blah, blah.
My God.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I ought to light a candle or something while we talk about it. You know, put a scented candle. We could maybe get in the bathtub and have this conversation. God, that was a bad sex scene. Let's hope that Zing just avoids sex scenes from now on. The man is a genius, Dustin Nguyen. If you happen to listen to this, you're a genius.
Well,
but
a director can't change the script. Like, he was given this, he did just a lot of, like, face shots, you know, and Vega does the, like, come on, you're not a gangster, come play for my team, while naked. I'm like, you never want your life to depend on decisions that you've gotten somebody to make while they were naked. That's not a good life plan.
Am I putting this into the thing, or did we get one of those really stereotypical scenes where they're showing the two, like, fucking, and the close-up is on the backs, and then they switch the focus to the candles behind them, and they have the people in the foreground.
Oh,
yeah, as they reach their time lapse.
90s.
Yeah, my God. It was, to anybody who never stayed up real late to watch softcore porn on cable television, it didn't benefit anyone. But, yeah, we're all...
So I'm actually wondering if Dustin didn't go, I've got to do a sex scene. Okay, I am going to drape this in as much Velveeta as I possibly can.
I mean, it was practically a women in prison sex scene.
I mean, because if he decided, like, fine, but I'll do it as cheesy as I can get away with, then props to him for that, because that's how I took it. I'm like, this is cheesy.
And then it goes right into the cheesiest bro line of all time, because Young June is going to bang a prostitute, and Hong is mocking him, and he's like, we all pay for it one way or another. Oh my God. You don't know how many times a day this is said in America. But on every job that involves 3 or more men, it is said at least once a day. At least.
So this whole thing about men are always thinking about the Roman Empire, that's their cover story?
Oh, no. They're thinking about how in the Roman Empire you didn't have to pay for sex because you were just raping young boys.
Okay,
so
but
they just have all that boy butthole in their head.
There was still pay for sex with women in the Roman Empire.
Was there? I thought you just raped them too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, there were prostitutes. And like I was talking about how women had their hair covered or uncovered.
Oh,
yeah.
But once you got married, you just beat your wife and married, or you just beat her and raped her. And
right,
raped her
but you get sick of that.
Raped her and beat her. The Taliban doesn't seem to. They seem to be very contented with daily raping and beating and the beating and the raping.
I'm here for escapism, Jamie. Quit it.
Okay. Well then.
Okay. Anyway, let's get back into the comic book scene where we are in the fancy dinner in the fancy-ass Baroque Spanish room.
Oh, but see, this is where... But before they go to dinner, Vega tries to get Assam to quit being a gangster. She says, you're no gangster.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, come play for my team, but I'm going to ask you on
gangster. You could be my gangster.
Right. And he's like, I'm already working for a woman who gets naked for money. She does. Atoy doesn't anymore. She has other people that do that, but I'm already working for her. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't hang your life decisions on the stuff that you decided while naked. I'm just saying.
No.
Say it.
No. But then, don't copy any of the things that Elijah Rooker says in this, because then, I mean, this is just the worst male lines. Do you want to say the lines that he says?
Well, first of all, he starts calling Assam Sam, which was great.
I missed that because I was so hung up on you're Chinese and I'm American, but we both have a taste for Mexican women.
The Mexican hotties. I know you're here for a chick. It's not because you're not here about the money. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
No, we're here for the Mexican women. We got a taste.
I mean,
Jesus. Is there anything worse than men who have a flavor preference for women? My God. Oh, I like Asian women. Kill yourself. Just Jesus.
But he was definitely doing the, I'm a rich guy who's been everywhere, so like tell me stuff, make my life more fun because I'm bored. But when he did the whole like, yeah, you should come work for me, and if you don't feel like it now, I can be pretty persuasive. Like, I can talk anybody into anything. And I was like, again, you never go into a conflict without the deck being so stacked. It's either your way. It's not even my way or the highway. It's my way or death, basically.
And he acted that so perfectly because he was not waiting for a response. He was just steamrolling Assam as soon as he started to speak. It was amazing. That was really
and
well
then
acted.
I can be pretty persuasive. Took me a little while to grind down the little woman here, and I was just like, oh, you are making me want to reach out and strangle you. Like, this is acted so well. I want to kill you.
Oh, my God. We're only like 20 years out of calling stalkers a determined suitor. He was a determined suitor. Oh, my God.
I mean, and the way he's talking, it's like, she's like, well, I guess I decided to marry him because I felt like living. I felt like continuing to live.
Yeah. Well, he killed my entire family.
Well,
so...
we get to that because at this point, you're starting to feel like Marisol and Lope have like some connection. You're like, what's going on? Well,
you can definitely tell she's afraid of him, and she's also placating him. Because when he says to her, I ground you down over time, didn't I, honey? And she's like, she gives that little prim smile. She's like, yes, of course you did. Yeah. The toy thing.
Yeah. But then we go in to my favorite recreation of, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You kill my father. Prepare to die.
But before we get to that, we have another cliched line that you will always get out of dudes who own guns versus dudes who like to fight, which is got a move that can block a bullet, which is the move or the line that that Smith says to Assam, where you know that Assam is either going to catch a bullet in his teeth or do something that is going to make this man regret that statement. And he does.
Well...
And then Vega launches into her Inigo Montoya.
Yeah, and she just... And instead of, like, this sword, it was made for a six-fingered man, you get the, like, wow, that's a unique gun. I have seen it before. I'm like, it's, like, all of the notes are there, and I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Something's going to happen. And then the most ostentatious unloading of the gun.
That is the most ostentatious gun. When you said Baroque earlier, let's talk about the Baroque nature of this gun. It is a gilded, I don't know what, it's like a 44 or 45. It's long as hell. And it's got all this gold filigree down the sides. It's a beautiful weapon.
Oh, yeah. And carving in it, and and it's like a custom caliber. Yeah. And, and so it's like a 45 and a half or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And
46 and 2/3.
And it's chambered in a special round. But Vega, as we see as she's giving this speech, has a pendant that looks suspiciously like a bullet.
And when I went back and watched it, I'm like, that was the most purloined letter bullet ever. It was there the whole time. But she's always wearing so much jewelry, you didn't even see it.
So she's laughing at him the whole time, like, ha, 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 I'm wearing this bullet right in front of you, jackass. Oh, it's beautiful. She's spitting in his eye the entire time.
And that's super ostentatious, like, because she tells the story, and that's when it's like the Inigo Montoya, prepare to die, and then unchambers it, and Rooker thinks he's like such the badass ass, like, okay, I know, I know, but I'm still going to hand you this gun.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's handed her the gun as she started telling the story, and I'm sure that he's like, I've killed a lot of people, but this sounds familiar. And then as she's telling it, he's like, well, and then he even says, like, all right, well, yeah, I killed your whole family. Who gives a shit? Like, hand the gun back, dummy. Like, you can't do shit with it.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and then she puts the bullet right in it. And then Assam shows Smits his move to stop a bullet, which is to keep the man from pulling the gun out of his holster altogether and stab him in the chest.
I was like, this is such a reprise of don't bring a weapon to a bolo fight.
It really was.
But, yeah, offer me money, offer me power, offer me my father back. Like that, I was just the reprise of that beautiful duel in The Princess Bride, which is my favorite movie in the whole world. So, I was just like, this is a great recreation of that entire mood.
If only we could get Cary Elwes into this show. It would be amazing. Maybe he'll show up in season 4.
Yeah, but he'd probably have to play like an old bad guy.
He could play a doctor like he did in Saw. He could just cut off his own foot and die. And bleed to death. There you go.
But yeah,
boy, that was a shock, I have to say, and it's totally unrelated to the film. But that when I saw to see the dude from Princess Bride cut his foot off, I felt some kind of way about that.
Well, but on just a quick food note, totally plausible luncheon. The utter brownness of everything that's going on, I was like, oh, nice work. Okay. But also the whole
I couldn't really make. They had a beautiful spread there, but I couldn't really make out any of the other than like beef ribs. I saw beef ribs.
Okay. But the whole high-end gun manufacturer in Mexico, again, a lot of like the technology about how to make great guns came from Germans, and again with the German immigration, that's totally going to be a thing. But the constant
revolution.
Yeah, because the Spanish did have some gun manufacture, but theirs were like very arquebussy and clunky and flaky, and it wasn't until they came and started really mixing with German technology in the New World that Spanish gun manufacture really got good.
Oh. Well, it wasn't good around this time, I know, because Santa Anna... Well, they might have had decent guns, but I know Santa Anna wasn't buying bullets. He was buying buttons instead.
Yeah, it is. Santa Anna is a whole story in his own.
This is the era of Santa Anna, isn't it? This is that time. Or no, Santa Anna was a little earlier, because that was 18...
Was it?
This is right.
Yeah, this is right in there. Yeah. But providing gun... Oh, I'm talking about like personal sidearms and firearms, not like large-scale supplies for armies.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so gotta move to block a bullet. Well, don't let you get your gun. And then, Assam is so mad at Lope at this point. But he's also, like, gotta get the fuck out of here. So he just grabs the knives off the table. I'm like, okay, young June's gonna get his blades back. He's like, I need my crew. I gotta find my crew. God damn it! But I don't want to die, so...
Who does?
Yeah, and...
That is a fun slobber knocker as they try to fight their way out of there. And young June's going... Everybody's kind of... It has kind of a Dungeons and Dragons, it's like... Because, you got the cleric, and you got the warrior, and you got the princess, and they're all fighting with their different styles. It's very fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was like, sort of, it's a beautiful brawl. I mean, just everybody's going.
Yeah, And I was surprised that that Smits didn't shoot them, but we come to find that the reason why Smits does not shoot them all and loads them into a carriage to be hung by the sheriff is because there is a plan.
Marisol.
Yes, Rooker's wife, Marisol.
It's like, I will not have this murder on my hacienda. You cannot do that. And he's like, oh, okay. All right, sure.
Sure, lady.
I just wanted to make a quick note. As they're stepping into the cage, you see that Lope Vega is wearing fishnets. Fishnets were always a, like, fancy, tempting underwear thing. They were never practical.
Okay.
And they were developed in France around the whole can-can thing.
Okay. The can-can is the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, and with women kicking up their legs, and the whole thing is they're not wearing any underwear.
Oh, no shit.
That's why the whole dance was so scandalous. Like, women are, like, lifting up their skirts and kicking.
Holy shit. I didn't know that. The whole time I've been like, who gives a shit about this dumbass dance? Like, why are the Rockettes doing this? It's so dumb. But I'm used to the Rockettes. They're always wearing underwear. I've been robbed. Right. We've all been robbed. We've been robbed of vaginas.
So the fishnets was sort of to add to the titillation of the whole, like, fancy French underwear showing. And so only, like, the most sort of exclusive or dirtiest can would have no underwear. But that was, like, why it was such a scandalous dance. It was all about showing your underwear. And so they started fiddling around with all sorts of different underwears under their skirts, or, none at all. And fishnets were part of the whole progression. And so the first time they appear is in about 1890.
That is amazing. So we're learning stripper history now. We got stripper history, martial arts history, food history, fashion history. We're doing it all. This is amazing. This is the greatest podcast ever.
So they're in the cage, and Assam is like, God damn it, you used me. Like, they are so mad. And I am laughing with Lope Vega because she's like, okay, yes, I used you, but I have a plan. I planned it.
She's clearly trolling him. She's smiling the entire time, and they're just mad as shit. You're getting us hung, and she's smiling. It's like, either this woman's totally out of her mind, and you guys missed it, or maybe you should just chill the fuck out.
Yeah, I was like, she has that air about her that it's definitely like a suicide revenge mission, but she is clearly so successful. The woman knows how to do a plan, and I'm kind of wondering how much young June is mad because he's like, oh shit, she has a plan. God damn it! How come she has a plan?
Why can't I ever think of a plan?
Right. And so the whole thing about like the cops who work for Marisol being in on the plan, I was like, I bet these guys' dads probably worked for the hacienda, and so like they're working security for Rooker, but Rooker totally into wage theft, so they were ready to take him down and work for Marisol because their dads probably worked for Marisol's dad on the hacienda.
Wow, you've really worked up a backstory for these cops who were in the show for 10 seconds.
But it's like, okay, Smits is Rooker's guy, and he's pissed off, but, like, why would these guys be putting them into the carriage to get away? So I was like, that's why.
Because Marisol paid him off?
Yeah, and they probably had worked for Marisol's dad back in the day.
Ah, yeah, well, that would give her the inside track so she could just walk up and slide them a little envelope with some money in it and be like, make sure these people get away
and they
safe.
Probably... Because they're like, yeah, I'll work for Rooker, but I don't like him.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody would.
Yeah. So, Assam can't be too mad because, he would have totally gone on a revenge trek. He totally would have. He would have loved it.
Same with young June. The opportunity to kill somebody has always enticed them to go anywhere. So,
yep.
But then they get freed and they are on their way back home. And, the ending is phenomenal because...
Okay, before we get to that, I just have to say that this show is doing so much for, like, where were all the women revenge fantasy movies when I was growing up? Where they actually get their goddamn revenge. Because Atoy gets to kill people who've pissed her off. Lope Vega gets to kill the guy. You kill my father, prepare to die. She takes him out. She gets her man. I was just like, yes. And so the thing where she gets shot in the end, that was such a flip of the normal trope where the guy like successfully does his mission and then his girlfriend gets killed because the dumb shit revenge guy shoots the wrong person. Instead, like, no, it's a suicide mission and she dies in the end. I'm like, I'm okay with that. Because so often you see the guy go on the suicide mission and he miraculously survives, and then his girlfriend gets fucking shot. And so I really love the flip of this.
It is also really refreshing to have a female revenge film that has nothing to do with her being raped.
Yes!
Oh, it's just...
Thank you!
And that isn't 45 minutes of rape and 10 seconds of murder. How about it's nice. It's nice. How about this area we live in?
Both Atoy, she's killing a guy over financial bullshit, and here she's like, you took my stuff, you prepared to die. Like, she got that, and I can't tell you how happy. That's part of why I loved this movie.
And then she dies satisfied with when she says, Assam, would you have quit and run away with me? And he's like, of course I would have. And he lies.
Yes. And so again, that's
it's
another
the roles
flip
are reversed. I see it.
Where he is comforting her as she fades. Oh, it made my heart so happy. And so with this ending, it was the cherry on top.
Because they totally thought they had gotten away with it. I mean, aside from the fact that Vega died, which they're all pretty nonplussed by the fact Vega died, but I guess people die all the time.
But she died great. It was a great death.
But there is that, I guess. I don't know who's going to be running her club now, but...
Happy Jack!
Oh yeah, probably happy. He's going to be even happier. But But yeah, so they think that they've gotten away clean because now they've got the money to replace the opium that they lost, and everything's going to be good. And they walk in to, oh shit! It's like, I don't know if you've ever been fired, but getting called into your boss's office the second you walk into work is a bad time. And that's exactly what happens. They walk into 3 of the big bosses sitting there.
With all the henchmen in their clean white shirts. And the threatening eyebrow of Father June was just delicious.
For such a massively peaceful man. And this man, if you look at his Instagram, is the most peaceful man on planet Earth. He is a Buddha come to life. But in this show, he is the most menacing old man that has ever lived. It's amazing.
Yeah. It was great. So one sort of like last thing, skipping back, the way that they transitioned from country to city, the sort of like transition into the city streets, the city lights, that was such a good little piece of direction there. I enjoyed the hell out of that.
I missed that entirely. I might have to go back and rewatch.
Yeah. But yeah, when and young June's face when he goes in before you even see who's all in the room, and just his face, and you're like, oh, and then they turn around and it's the board of directors and all their flunkies and their flunkies, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. I think I probably lost color in my face when that happened, because I've been in trouble in my life so many times, and like I just was empathizing with those guys. Just, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Especially when you think you've gotten away with something scot fucking free, and then you come to find that not only did you not get away with it, that you are totally out of control fucked.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bad feeling.
So I was just like, I don't know what's going to happen in the next episode, but it's going to be intense, and a lot of things are going to happen, and oh my God.
Oh, such a great episode.
Yes. So... yeah, and then the music that they had at the end was Spanish rapping, which I recognized, and I was like, what? No, it also had Chinese rapping in it. So they either pulled or had written some, like, the perfect music for this episode, too.
Oh, they are so good at picking music for this, too. It just, every single song that is at the end of one of these episodes belongs on your playlist. It's amazing.
Yeah, that was so... I really, really enjoyed this season's movie. There's only 4 episodes left in the season, and I don't know they have a lot of stuff to get through, so I have a feeling the rest of the season's just going to be action packed.
Well, we know what the last episode in this season is going to be. We know what that is. It's going to be our fight with Leary. So that is going to be amazing.
Yeah. But next episode is If You Wait by the River Long Enough. Not sure what that means, so I'll have to clearly go watch the next episode. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff that was sort of left on the back burner and is probably left at a simmer and is now at a full boil.
Well, I am excited to get to the future ones. And if in case anybody wants any more, like a little bit more background on the fight tournament thing, just ultra fast, because kickboxing and mixed martial arts and all those things didn't really exist at the time that Bruce Lee... kickboxing did, but in 1970, when Bruce Lee wrote that Circle of Iron, what was happening was all these different countries were establishing their own martial art as a way to express their nationalism through sport. And so Japan basically took Chinese kung fu that had gone to Okinawa during the Boxer Rebellion. Like, all these different martial arts masters went to Okinawa to get away from all the strife that was going on in China with all the revolutions and shit. And the Japanese found their fighting arts in Okinawa and applied them to fist fighting, because they only had grappling styles because they had been in armor for years and years and years.
Well, and like also this was armor. Like taking advantage of like the peasant tools, because only the nobility could have like weapons, right?
Yep. Yeah. So but that was also part of the application of all this like revolutionary war effort going into all these improvised weapons, because all these armies were comprised of like farmers, so they had to be able to fight with stuff that they used to like beat the wheat down or thresh the wheat and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so led by a Korean dude, the Japanese national team started fighting the Thais in kickboxing, and they could not defeat the Thais, so they just kept going at them over and over and over again. And then the Chinese came in 10 years later and invented this stuff called Sanshou, which was Chinese kung fu mixed with grappling, because the Japanese, the only way they could beat the Thais was to use grappling in the ring to throw them and get them down that way. So so all these different styles were mixing at the time that Bruce Lee was writing The Circle of Iron. And then in 1974, you had your very first mixed martial arts event in Hawaii. And that's where so all of this stuff got piled into Enter the Dragon. And all of these different, the Enter the Dragon was basically giving you kind of a glimpse into what was going on in the world, but a fantasy version of it. So instead of it being sport fighting with these people who were totally unsupported by anybody in their country, and they were doing it for very little money and in front of no people, it's
right, because mixed martial art at this point was you're bastardizing our pure art that we're trying to spread around the world.
Oh, it wasn't even that. It was really just that because fighting was illegal in most countries, fist fighting was illegal, and it was an illegal activity. People weren't. It was a pain in the ass to do a prize fight. You had to run from the cops. There were so many things to do.
Right. Yeah.
And so if they were going to exhibit their fight styles in front of people, they would do it in wrestling, which is why you had catch wrestling. And in catch wrestling, you had Indians who were barnstorming all through America and trashing everybody, Turks. So there was a lot of this exotic. These exotic people, and they play up on their exoticism, which you see reflected in these tournament fights. But it was really just more of a one-on-one. They didn't fight in tournaments because they didn't have any medical care. So you couldn't do 10 fights in a night. You'd fucking die of an infection afterwards. Or of internal bleeding or whatever. So
something, yeah.
Yeah, but I am so glad that got into the show, and then I got to talk about it a little bit, because martial arts are so much fun, and to see it reflected in arts, and art reflecting life, and life reflecting art, it's too much fun. So.
Oh yeah, and picking a great director for it, and
and they had they had a UFC middleweight champ do a cameo in it. I mean, it couldn't get any better.
And so the fight coordinator, Brett Chan, who's been with the show the whole time, he must have had so much fun going through his Rolodex and just calling everybody.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that the stunt team for this show has got to be amazing.
Well, you could just see the guys in the crowd. I'm these guys are professional, strong dudes, because you could just see by the fit of their clothes and the way they stood and how they looked next to the chairs. I'm these are very big people with lots of muscles.
They were probably all stunt people.
Yeah.
Dustin Nguyen does some cool stuff with stunt people sometimes on Instagram.
Yeah.
And, they make some really neat fight scenes on Instagram.
Yeah. So this episode really sort of brought through a lot of the promise of the whole Bruce Lee premise, and it was great to watch. And clearly, my homework is to go watch Enter the Dragon finally.
Yes, I won't say that it is the greatest movie ever filmed, but it is a good part of cinematic history. I wouldn't advise you to watch any of the other Bruce Lee movies. I mean, if you want to watch Chinese Connection, but don't watch the rest. They're all shit otherwise.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like watching Kurosawa films. People go back and look at it, and they're like, okay, yeah, it's okay. And you're like, no. It's not that it's the greatest film, though a lot of Kurosawa's films are very, very good. Sort of the way we see film now, that's sort of much faster and cut together and has a lot of camera abilities that he didn't have. You're like, no, this is how it started. He invented the horseman coming over the hill, galloping down in your face. This is the original.
Yeah, those Kurosawa movies are pretty cool to watch, because you, like you said, you just constantly are getting oh my god, a crossover to this, a crossover to that. I see where he pulled this, I see where he pulled that. You can see the root of so much stuff.
Right, and so that's why Enter the Dragon, you've mentioned it a bunch of times, and just having done karate for a while, I've heard about it, and I'm I just need to go back to the source and see I need to go back.
There you go. And I think we both should go back and watch Grosse Pointe Blank at some point because that 1974 first ever mixed martial arts tournament that I talked about that was in Hawaii, Benny Urquidez won that, and he is the Basque national terrorist who gets killed by John Cusack in Grosse Pointe Blank. He is arguably the greatest middleweight fighter of all time.
Oh, I love that movie. That is a good damn time.
It is. We might have to do that for a Patreon extra at some point.
Yeah. We got to get that together. Okay.
All right.
Well,
that's it.
We will see you next week for the next episode.
Yes, which I don't know how they're going to top this episode, honestly.
No, it satisfied a lot of things in me, but I'm looking forward to another good episode with all the stuff that's like left home waiting. Coming to a boil.
We have yet to have an anticlimactic episode, so it's going to. I bet this one's going to be Leary heavy.
All right, sounds good. All right, bye-bye.
Till next week.
Yes. You can find more of Jamie and how he can make you stronger at plagueofstrength.com. You can learn more about old American food on my other podcast, The History of American Food. We're on Instagram at PCG Podcast, and you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.